welcome to the Provo Library Podcast. I'm Erica Hill. I'm the Community Relations Manager.
I'm Carla Gordon, and I'm the Library Director.
And we are here with Jen Bruton, our Library Board Chair. As of are you officially?
I think I still have a couple of weeks.
I think you have a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of weeks left.
What a strange introduction I just gave you. This is our board chair. She's on her way out.
But it's been a great year.
Yes.
It's been a really busy year.
It has been a busy year, and we're excited to have you here today and on the board in general.
Thank you.
And even though you're not the chair anymore, you're still on the board.
Right. 2 more years.
Yep. Fantastic. We love that. So today we are talking a little bit about an elephant in the room-y kind of subject. We have been talking a lot about our budget recently, and we thought what better place and space if people have questions about our budget to take some time and answer your questions in the most delightful way.
And the questions we assume you will be asking.
Yes.
Because we didn't actually.
And it turns out we are not mind readers.
But we do pretty good.
We do.
We do most of the time.
Librarians, pretty good at that. So we're here to talk about the budget today. So we're going to start sort of generally and then work more specifically into where we are at. So my first question is for Carla, which is, where does library funding come from?
So a lot of libraries, everybody funds their library a little bit differently. And so it can be a very unique situation to each organization. But we at Provo are really lucky because many, many years ago, and I heard it, like someone said—
I think it's a Carnegie thing.
It was a Carnegie thing that you had to have dedicated funds for the library. So we are not part of the general fund, which is where a lot of the other library or city departments have their, they share money and they divide it out and the mayor does all of that. We are this separate entity. So we are part of the city, but our funding is separate. And so that kind of makes us unique. And when we need more money, it's us asking for it. And the city's general fund is separate than that. So that's kind of confusing, but it's really great, especially when times get hard, because that protects. That's why Carnegie wanted it. If that's a true thing that we're saying,
that feels right.
Anyways, they do that to just protect the library from having money taken from the library and given to other departments. And so just to make sure that the library is always funded. So for our funding, we get over 80% of our funding is through property taxes. So that's
significant.
A big chunk.
Are we going to do a thing that we've never done before? I think we are, which is we are about to introduce visual aids into this podcast.
Yes.
So if you're listening,
I have a pie chart.
Imagine a pie chart and 80%, 80-something percent. 81% of it
is property taxes. So that is completely reliant on the property tax that is drawn in by the county takes care of it and brings that in. So that is set at a certain level. And we'll talk about that more, what that level is right now. But it's set at a certain level. We bring that money in. We have 2 other tax revenue streams. And I'm going to just be upfront. I'm a librarian. I've got specialties in a lot of different things. I do not understand these other 2 taxes, but there's a vehicle tax that's about 5% of our budget and a tax redemption. Of our revenue, sorry. 5% of our revenue is this vehicle tax. And then 7% is this tax redemption prior year. And my understanding is if people are paying late taxes, it's something to do with that. And so that's between those 2, that's about 12% of our budget. So the 3 together, if you add 71 and 5 and 7.
Or 81?
81, 5,
81, 5, and 7.
We are so good at math.
We are not. But we have calculators.
That's 94%.
84. It's 94%.
Because if it's 81 plus 5 plus 7.
That's it. 94% of our budget is tax revenue that we don't have any control over, what we bring in. We do 2% of our revenue is through fees and fines. I know people think that we bring in lots and lots of money for all of our overdue books.
Especially since we stopped charging late fees for juvenile, which is just the right decision. Also, bit of a financial hit.
It's about half. It was about half of our
not our
fees.
Operating budget.
But we did that 3 years ago?
4 maybe.
3 or 4 years
I think
ago.
a good way of thinking of it is like the library takes that budget hit instead of the families, right? If there's a late book or your child hid it under their pillow because they love it forever.
Do we have to give it back?
Yeah,
You do have to give it
no
back.
experience with that.
Our room rentals are about 3% of our budget, of our revenue. Oh my gosh, like the words today. Okay. And finally, used book sales, 1%. So it's not
Even
a lot.
in a downpour.
Even in a downpour.
We may have been very rained on at an outdoor book sale yesterday.
the day before this recording.
It was
torrential. It's fine.
we are slightly shell-shocked, if I'm honest.
We all walked away. And then there's 1% of interest income that we get from some savings accounts that we have. Well, one savings account that we have. So that's kind of where the money comes from. And again, we just don't have a lot of control over that. If any of those, if the tax revenues are to go up at all, then we have to ask for the money through the city council, who then needs to do a truth in taxation hearing in which they decide whether or not that revenue is increased. So we can charge for lots of things. We could like doing fundraisers, which we do plan on doing, but you're talking about possibly tens of thousands of dollars, and like our entire budget is just over $5 million right now. So tax revenue is just where we get funded. And if you think about it, the library as an entity, people keep comparing us to the rec center, and it's just, we're more like the school board in that it's something that the community pays for, that everyone gets benefit from, even if you don't use it. For many years, I did not have children, and I paid much property tax.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is. And so the library is like that. It's a better way to think of it than like, why isn't the library making money? And it's because we don't make money.
Yeah, it's not the purpose, right? I don't know. I feel like the library is it's out of the goodness of our community's heart, right? And I feel like that's one of the great things about Provo, is that I love our theme, like welcome home, right? And I feel like the library embodies that in some ways, right? That we're a home, we're a family. So we're going to support the families that need it through the library, even though maybe not everybody's using it, but you're still supporting each other.
Right.
So,
but it is available to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that is one thing. I do a presentation for different organizations just to like introduce library services to people. And I have named it for decades, like it's called, Are You Getting Your Money's Worth Out of? Because, it's like the library's free. Well, the library is free, but also everybody's paying for it. Everybody is paying for it in some way if you reside in Provo. And if you're not getting your money's worth, please come in. And even just checking out 3 or 4 audiobooks.
Covers your...
Yeah, like there's things here that can enrich lives and return to the community the investment that it's making in us.
And you actually don't even have to come in.
That is true. We'd love for you to come in.
We'd love for you to come in. Also,
But also,
if all you want to do is check out books on your phone or whatever, I mean, that is, I would say 80% of my personal library use is just
digital.
on Libby.
Yeah.
I read picture books to my kids, and that does actually save me a huge amount of money. As an adult, I don't check out 50 books at a time, but my kids for sure will.
See, and I'm an IKEA bag full of books kind of person.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
yeah. So that's our revenues.
That's our revenues.
Anything I missed?
I feel like that was great. Good overview.
Yeah. I think that's great. In general, how is that money spent? This is a Carla-heavy podcast. In case
so
you were,
This is an important
And
question,
I have like
though.
notes and graphics so that I remember all the exact numbers. But most of it goes to salaries, which is not uncommon. I think for most organizations in general, like that's the way it is right now.
turns out
People
have to pay people.
do have to pay people.
Not this one.
Not me.
She's here for free.
Volunteer.
Carla and I are getting paid.
Yeah. And I'm happy to pay you with my taxes.
Thank you, Jen.
Salaries take up about 63% of our budget, which, to be honest, like, and we've been comparing ourselves to other libraries quite a bit lately, just trying to make sure that, like, you just want to verify that you're right-sized in a lot of different metrics, kind of. And so we've been looking at that. 63% is actually very, very healthy. If it's a lot higher than that, then in hard times it gets.
You start talking layoff.
Yeah. You don't want to be too heavy. And to be honest, we keep that 63% at that level because we are very heavily invested in part-time employees. It's about 25% of our employees are full-time and the 75% are part-time. And you just need a certain core group of full-time staff because they are here every day, they have more experience, they stay longer, and that's where you get quality customer service. You get more. Every time I hire a librarian, we're like, well, it's going to take a year to get them like to train people because there's just so much going on and there's so much to the job that it's just keeping people for as long as possible is really good. So we hate to take that percentage of full-time to part-time down any lower. And
that would be rough.
That would be really hard. It would be really hard. So salaries. That's where 63% of our money goes. Overheads are 7%. Overheads are, because we use the city's finance, their HR department, their legal department, like all of their resources, they help us a great deal. And we really appreciate that. And they buy like our timekeeping software and like all of those things. So if they're going to do that, we pay them back for it. So there's a certain formula that they use to figure out like per FTE or for help with the building, per square foot, like all of these things. So they have it all worked out. And so about 7% of our budget goes back to the city to help pay for all of those amazing services that help us run so much more efficiently. So that's great. Right now, we spend about 9% of our budget on collections. So that's books, including digital books, and that you want it to be between 8 and 10%. So we feel pretty good about that, though we have decreased that this coming year, trying to decrease our costs, tighten the budget a little bit. You don't want it too low for too long because then you're not buying all the books that people want. But
and they complain
about it. And we want people to be happy. We're compulsive people pleasers around here. Technology, 6%. You still have to pay for your computers. There's
the iPads the kids use.
iPads, but it's also services, like technology services. So like our catalog, you have to pay for those software things, for our website and the software we use to keep our calendar up and all the registration stuff, like all of that costs money. So there's that. Building. This beautiful building. So usually it costs about 8% of our budget for power bills, gas bill, regular maintenance, stuff like that. And then on top of that, in some years, like this past year, about 10% of our budget was spent on some upgrades. I don't know if anyone's heard about it, but we had a chiller that went out and they're expensive. It's like $500,000 to replace that for these two very big buildings. So sometimes that building cost is more. Sometimes it's a little less.
Sent too many emails about various parking lot upgrades.
There was that too. Our parking structure was having some weakening. There's been some leaks ever since it was built. And so we're doing some structural work on that. So we just want to keep it from getting not safe. It's safe right now and we're doing the work that we need to do. And we're planning all that out. But
it turns out that costs money too.
It's expensive.
Well, it's 20 years, right? And every building needs maintenance after 20 years.
It's true. Any homeowner knows.
You know,
that's when
things start
breaking.
That's when your warranties start expiring.
Right.
So that's how you know.
As I said today, like both my toilet flushers went out randomly this week. Like,
and the house is those
it's been renovated about 20
years ago.
Yeah, so. It's time.
We do lots of programming around here, and that takes up 1% of our budget. So I think that's one thing that people also say, like, just cut back on the programming that you're doing. Don't do so many things. But it's really such a small percentage of our budget. We, of course, are tightening our belts there too. And we raised our prices to the fairy tea. Like there's some things that we're doing to make sure we're covering costs for expensive things. And we did a cost use analysis and went through, and most of our programs are just run on pennies per person. Like we try to do things for not very much money, and we do a pretty good job. So there's not a lot that. And then 6% is miscellaneous, which is just miscellaneous. There's just random things that come up. You have to fix a camera on a security system, or there's just random things that you have to have money for.
And at some point, you can't have so many pie chart wedges.
I mean,
so
yes.
There's just only room for
dumped
so
a
many.
bunch of stuff in there in that 6%. So, but those are the things that we truly have control over is the collections, technology to some degree, our programming, and that miscellaneous. And so together, it's about 25% of our budget that we actually have control over unless we go to like lowering our staff.
Layoffs, yeah.
Which we're not really looking at layoffs. It would be more like a hiring freeze, and we would try to make up some money that way. But like we couldn't do all the things that we're doing. And so as you lower your staff, you're looking at, okay, well, which programs can we now not cover, or what hours can we now not be open? And we're hoping that never gets to that point, but that's just
reality.
It's the way the budget is. That's where 65% of our budget is spent, and other things like the overheads and, the building costs. It's just not something we have direct control over.
Yeah.
So other than walking around turning off lights.
Which many children would be happy to help us with.
They do like turning off lights randomly if they can find where they're at.
They don't like turning off lights in my house, but they are so happy to turn off any industrial lights they can find. It's that power, right? Like I can turn it off.
Yeah.
So that's where our money goes.
So I don't feel like we're stepping around this issue, but just in case you haven't heard and you're like, why are they talking about this budget anyway? The situation we find ourselves in right now is not ideal.
Not the end of the world.
No one's closing any library.
Right.
And somewhat inevitable,
I
think is one thing to say. Like,
should we story time? I mean, I feel like we have been making you talk so much.
Okay. Do you want to tell a story?
Should I tell a story? You can help me tell this story.
This is.
20 years ago.
20 years ago.
So when they moved into this big, beautiful building, something about the library tax. We talked about how we have a dedicated tax stream. There is actually a cap on how much overall we can ask for. That's set by the state legislature?
No, that was set by city code.
City code?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I'm so good at telling this story.
Well, but I guess the important thing is we can't suddenly ask you to give us 50%.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, like there is a maximum that the library could possibly ask for, and it is not.
I think it's 0.001%.
Something like that.
Yes. I looked it up before I came.
Yep. And I should just know it.
But those double zeros,
there's a lot of zeros that come before and after a decimal point.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can charge up to that percentage of a property value.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's set, we cannot ask you for more money without going through a truth in taxation.
Yeah.
So as your property value increases, what we get from the city does not increase.
So this is something that I did not understand about property taxes generally in Utah, is that it's set for a dollar amount. And even as your property taxes go up,
your property values go up.
Correct. Your property values go up. Your taxes stay the same unless your taxing entity comes to you and says, hey, we're going to raise these things. And so it's not just like, well, you paid 25% in property and that stays constant. Like it's always this hearing process.
Right. Though there is some increase. So it's not that we have been completely flat.
Because there's new development.
There is new development. So we do get the new development, which has helped us.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that's clear also.
So it's like, not that we're at exactly the same budget as we were in 2001, because obviously there've been a few houses built in Provo.
Just a few.
Since 2001.
Yeah.
But this story has gone, but in 2001, when they moved into this building, they raised that tax level to the max that they could. and started bringing in revenue. They anticipated that this building would take more money to run than the old Center Street building, which it does. Yeah. And they anticipated that there would be some additional staffing needs, and with our bigger spaces that we could do more programming, so we would need more staff to make that happen, which we did. But in 2001, it turned out that was more money than they needed. So they were like, wow, I mean, who's sad about a budget surplus? They all went to Disneyland. They did not.
They did not
They
go to Disneyland.
responsibly put it in a savings account. And for many years, I think that was just, I mean, that's like the ideal situation when you have enough to cover your wants and your needs and put some away for just in case the chiller goes out.
Exactly.
And they did that. And then probably, I'm going to guess that it was around 2008, 2009-ish, perhaps a recession.
Just throw it out there.
So when we were talking about this earlier, Carla did some great hands.
I did. So
we're bringing in
revenues
more.
are up here, expenses are down here, and then at some point they're gonna meet. So for a while we were meeting in the middle, and making sure that we're not spending too much. But at some point, inflation and life, that expense
it turns out
is going to go up higher.
People do want to get paid more than they did. In 2001, I was working at Dairy Queen and making $7.50 an hour.
We do pay you
A little more than
that.
Not that much, but
$7.53 an hour.
Just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
But there is.
But for your education and and the services and the work that you do, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So at some point we started running on a deficit, and the decision was made. It seems like a bad time to ask our community for more money because we have a very, very healthy savings account. And I think we had, by that point, we were either close to or we had paid off the bond for our building, but the rec center had just started their process. That all adds, and we're all one community. We're trying to all help each other. And so we had this big savings account. And we said, well, we're just going to use that savings account to subsidize our budget and let us run a little bit on a deficit. And we'll just use that savings account as long as we can. And that is what allowed us to go 21 years without asking for an increase, for any kind of adjustment, for inflation of any kind. And I think that I was not in charge at the time, but I think that was just the right thing to do. It was good for everyone. But I think we knew that at some point, you're going to run out of savings. You're going to have to make an adjustment. And so last year was the first year that we felt like we were getting close to that point. And the plan was to slowly, over 5 years, increase that a little bit every year. So last year we asked for $100,000 more, which they gave us. They were great. They did a truth in taxation then as well, gave us that increase, and that did help.
It did.
However, it didn't help enough. This last year, the last 2 years actually, those tax revenues, so those are estimates. At the beginning of the year, we get an estimate from the county. Those estimates came in between $200,000 and $300,000 higher than what we actually brought in.
So they said you're going to have this much money, and we had this much.
Where we had anticipated dipping into our savings account $200,000 or $300,000, which is what we had been doing over the past few years. So it was pretty on par. It was then $200,000 and $300,000 more than that because the revenues were short, and then inflation and all of the things, plus this chiller expense. Anyways, our savings account just dropped a lot faster in the last couple of years than what we had hoped.
If you ever want to see Carla's eyes, just go. Ask sometime about the run on natural gas.
Oh yeah.
The $48,000 gas bill that we were like, have we not paid?
We did.
We did.
And there's a whole, anyway.
That's a different story. As they say in certain storytelling traditions, that's another story for another time.
That we took care of. We took care of that. But there are just things that happen, and you just have to be ready for them. And having a savings account for the moments that you don't plan for is just what every organization, and even with the city, like, there is a law, like, you can't have more than 35%, I believe it's 35% in reserve of your budget. And we're a bit below that right now. And so that 35% is, I think, like a safety net kind of thing. We would like to be back at that at some point. But in order to do that, we just have to stop pulling out of our savings account our operating costs. So this year, they came to me with it was actually $800,000 deficit. And I looked at that, and I will not lie, there were some tears. Like, I didn't know what we were going to do, because I knew that is a hefty ask.
Well, because again, if we're talking about that sliver of programs of money that we have control over, it's not $800,000.
It's not.
So we could stop every single, which we are not doing. Just again,
But we could.
We could stop every single library program that we do.
And
no more story time, no more anything, and that would make $100,000 difference, and that's still $700,000 short of a balanced budget.
So what we did, and we included the library board in the decisions and looking at just every way we could cut, and we came up with $300,000 worth of cuts. So we cut some services, we cut some programs, we cut our collection money, just tightening all the places. But the one thing that also to remember is like, there's no way you go 20 years without an adjustment, without tightening as you go. There haven't been, staff added. Whenever a full-time staff member or even a part-time staff member often like quits, we look at that position. It's like, is this where this money is needed? Is this where these hours are needed? Like, what can we do more with this? And we just really kept ourselves very tight anyways. And so it just came to a point where, like, any more, and we start cutting services to a point, like, it's just hard to like want so badly. Like, this is what we do. Like, we provide these services to our community, and we love doing it so much.
Yeah.
And then to be asked to do less, it hurts. And but people use these services. Like, these are things that people are using and appreciating. And we have wait lists for like our programs, and like, there must be value there and a desire there and a want there, and to say, we'll try to do less. We don't want to do less.
Yeah.
But we will if that's what is needed. So we were able to get it down to, and there was actually a revenue estimation went up a little bit. Originally our revenues were decreased, which was part of that $800,000 shortage as well, because the vehicle tax and the redemption tax went down by about $200,000. So that $800,000 deficit was also fed by less money coming in that we didn't have control over. But then when the estimation came in, it was about $80,000 more. So there's been kind of some movements on what they think we're going to bring in next year. And the number that's been settled on is at 450 is kind of where it was 800. We've gotten it down to 450, hoping that, in good faith, that we were just trying to do everything we possibly could to make that hit to our residents as low as possible. And then we went to the city council and asked for this. And we so appreciate like them continuing that conversation, because they are asking the questions that need to be asked. Raising taxes is just always like, you just have to be so careful. And we want everybody to be careful. And we want the community to let city council and us know, like, what services do you appreciate? Like, what are you looking for, so that we can adjust what we're doing according to that. If we like what we're doing, the $450,000 will keep us going. And then every few years there will again need to be an adjustment. Like, you can't ignore inflation as much as you want to. And we'll continue to try to find ways to be as conscious as possible of what we're spending and how we're spending it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about the last city council meeting, right, where they voted on this, that I felt like the community as well as the city council were saying, like, okay, we've done our due diligence, we've asked these questions, we've tried to cut where we can cut, and it looks like we still need this. So let's have this conversation to figure out, you know, how much of an increase do we really need, and how much can we do without at the library. Whilst I like you said, taking the hit, I think it's taking the hit in taxes and what the library can provide, right? So if we have to cut the hours of the library, that's a bummer, right? But it's what we want it to be fiscally responsible is really important to us and to our community and to the city council.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
It's nice that they're not just like, yeah, let's just raise the taxes, woohoo, you know. So
Definitely. I think that that's their responsibility in a lot of ways, is to, like, there are different people who have different control of and different roles in this process. And one of the roles of the city council is to oversee how the citizens are taxed and to really listen to them and make sure that nothing is feeling burdensome and that nothing is feeling like they're not getting, because in the most ideal situation is that you feel like the things that are being done with your tax money are worth or even above the dollar amount that you're paying. Like, when you see that return on investment, when you see that benefit to your life, then it's like, it's not burdensome to pay when you see the real value in your life. And so I think that it's a hard job for the city council to have to try and negotiate and recognize that we are a diverse community and not everybody uses the library. Not everybody loves. I don't know why. We're amazing, but not everybody's there, or not everybody feels like they have another $12 a year. You know, not everybody feels that, and I still get that, and so absolutely, I appreciate them moving forward. Jen, as a board member, watching this whole process play out, what things have surprised you, or what do you think regular library users, because you were an active user before you volunteered to be on the library board.
Yeah.
What things, even as an active user, do you feel like you didn't know before you joined the board?
I mean, I really feel like the number one thing we've already addressed is just how much, this is going to sound naive, but like just how much it costs to run a library without all of the fun stuff. Like just the nitty gritty, keep the building up and not 100 degrees and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Keep books put on shelves. Yeah, all those things.
And also, I didn't realize how few full-time employees the library had. That's the other thing. Like, I feel like that's really respectful of the community to have, like, the core group that's needed, right? But then also there's so many opportunities here to come and be a part-time member of the library staff. But also, I just love every year when we get presented with the budget, I love, like, we get to look and see, okay, this is where we made cuts this last year. This is where we're going to need a little more this next year. And it's, we can see every little thing as a library board, and we can look at it and decide, okay, this is a benefit for our community. Where we are spending our money matters. Every dollar matters. Every book that's purchased matters, that sort of thing. I guess maybe I wasn't surprised, but it was like a pleasant confirmation, right? That every dollar, every tax dollar that I have spent in my years of living in Provo, and my parents, I grew up here, has been to support the community, and it's accounted for. So, and I think that's one of the things, especially in the last years, we've tried to tighten the budget, that it's just, we've looked at it and said, yeah, there are a couple of places that we could trim, but for the most part, we've been really, the library's board and staff and directors and everybody have been careful.
Yeah.
So
one of my favorite analogies that I've heard Carla use is that, like, we are lean meat.
Yeah.
Like, honestly,
they're
there's
like, cut the fat. And I'm like,
there's just not fat.
It's not fat. We can trim some of the meat.
The meat. Yeah.
And I mean, there probably is some little bits of fat, but I feel like we've tried.
Well marbled, though.
Very interspersed.
You try and cut it out. Yeah.
And I think that's, like, when looking at the budget, like, we didn't really talk about, like, we want to start saving again. Like, we want to be able to put money every year aside for the bigger, especially building costs that we have coming up. And hoping that while we budget a certain way, like that we will find those little ways. Like, we're always telling people, do not ever spend money just to spend money. Like, if you're buying the books on CD and you feel like you have everything that people are needing and asking for, do not feel like you have to spend that extra amount, because anything we don't spend just goes directly to our savings account, and that just helps us. And we will just continue to do that. And I think that's another way. That's kind of where we find the fat, because it's hard to pinpoint as you're putting a budget together, like, what's going to be a little cheaper this year. Like, you never know. If it's a nice mild summer, and your AC is not going to be running quite as much, and your electric bill might be lower, or, gas rates can fluctuate. Like, you just never know. And so you want to give yourself enough money to cover your bills, but not so much that, anyways. So we usually find places where we save, and that's what I'm hoping. It's hard. It's been hard the last few years for me to, like, because of the way I budget myself personally, which is like, I don't like being careful and saving and saving and saving. And it's just, I'm getting less in the hole instead of saving and saving and saving, and we're building up a reserve.
Right.
So we kind of haven't talked about it, but there are some things that we're additionally doing. Like, some of the building does need repair. Our bricks need love. And so we're looking at grants to do some of that. I think there's grant opportunities that we want to continue to take advantage of. There's, I'm always looking at the building behind us as I talk about it. This lovely building.
So pretty.
It is.
And it was so worth saving.
It was worth saving. We love it.
And it's worth maintaining.
Yeah.
In a respectful way, right?
And we're planning for, in November, our first first ever, but it's going to be a book ball. And we're going to do a fundraiser. We want to sell 500 tickets. We're looking at ways of making it a unique, fun thing. And then we'll do a silent auction. So we'll get donations for that and try to earn a bunch of money that we can put away in those savings accounts to use when we're ready to put some little love into our building and get it where it needs to be. Because we're always walking around the building looking at things that it needs, making sure we're not ignoring care and maintenance and stuff. So.
Sometimes it's a little coy, but sometimes it lets us know.
Sometimes it surprises us, and sometimes it's,
And I think I love the idea of, like, asking the building, like, what do you need, right? But I think it's so nice to be when you come to the library, to be in a warmer, cool, clean place where you feel like there's enough lighting, where you feel safe, where you could, like, there's not a place in the library that you go that you're like, like, there's none of that, right? And I think, especially because it's a community building, we want everybody from our littlest babies to the elderly in our community to feel safe while they're here. And I think building maintenance is part of that, right? Everything from, like, the carpet to the walls to the bathrooms to, that sort of thing. And I feel like historic buildings are sometimes a little bit louder in their needs than, the brand spanking new building that you have. And how old was I? I was in 7th grade when this building opened. And so my family was part of the community effort to save it, right? And so it means even more to me that, like, that was one of the exciting things about being on the library board, I have to say, was I get to help maintain this gorgeous place.
That you helped save. And
as a kid, I remember dinner conversations that we're going to go to the city council meeting and we're going to talk to them about saving the building. And now I get to do it again.
And there's a lot of concern over the building, and I appreciate that. But we really can't care for our building unless our operating costs. Like, it's really hard to say. It's hard to say, like, let's take care of the building, but let's lower the level of service that we're giving on our programs and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to make those decisions. And I think we can really have both. And so asking for this funding this year, we're going to not ask for anything next year. And then in the coming couple of years, we'll just keep an eye on it and try to right size that so that we're taking care of our residents and we're giving exceptional service to the amazing people that we get to see every day, and that we're also giving exceptional care to this amazing building.
And the people that work here, right? that come here I know you won't toot that horn, but I will, right? I think that's, you want to have qualified librarians to help you. And if you want to check out some of the equipment that's not a book, you want to have somebody that can assist you with that. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many times my very rowdy boys have run into the library to the librarians and asked them to help them find a book. And not only do they help them find that book, but then they come out with like 5 books that they would love.
If you love this one, you're probably going to love this one too.
It takes a lot of years of experience to be able to do that really well. And that's where the full-time
and that's where you want to take care of your people too, because that is part of the library. So anyway,
I just feel like we have probably one more thing, and that is, what can our users do, or what's the takeaway from this conversation? Like, where do we go next? I think we've been pretty clear about where our funds come from, kind of where we're at. What will happen if we don't get this increase, which is not going to be a tragedy. It's just there
will be consequences.
There will be consequences. We'll tighten things up more. We'll probably, like we said, have a hiring freeze, which there are certain positions that would probably be more painful than others.
And there are certain positions that are like, we just have to have people cleaning the building. Like there's certain things that we will have to have. But if we get rid of a librarian, like there will be services that will leave with each position that we're not filling. But that's something that that is on the table, and that is what the board and the staff are ready to do. If this is not, we will just, and we'll go on and ask again next year. I mean, like it's not a problem that's going to go away. I think that's kind of where we're at. It's not going to go away until it's taken care of. But if this is a year that just there's not the appetite for it, like it's just not going to happen, then we will do what we have to do, and we'll probably have to pull out of that ending fund balance a little bit more, and we will tighten as much as we can, and we will, try not
to cry.
Cry. We'll try not to. We'll try to make it as painless as possible for the people using the library, but there would be some services and things that would probably have to be cut because of that. And then the next year we will
have this
another day. We'll
have this
conversation again, because looking at the comparisons, like I said, we've been looking at a lot of comparisons for a lot of libraries, and we're just right there, like right in the middle. We're not most expensive. We're not the least expensive. But on a lot of metrics, we do a lot of things.
The most programs per branch that we can tell that's been reported based on statistics that are available to us. Most programs per branch in
the
Utah.
state, but in nationally, this is an interesting statistic that I found. Of 183 libraries in the country that serve populations near or around ours, so about, I think it's like 130 to 80,000 is where I kind of put that. So 283 libraries. We circulate 1.7 million items a year. And of those 283, we are fifth in circulations. And that's not per branch. And those other 4 that are above us have between 3 and 8 branches that they are circulating out of. We do it out of 1. And their budgets are between 9 million and 25 million, and we do it on 5. So it's like hard to look at that and say like, well, you guys are just asking.
Where can we cut?
You guys are asking like way more money than you should. We don't feel like we are. We feel like we do a lot, and our community needs a lot and wants a lot, and we want to provide that. But we do need a little extra funding to keep ourselves in a financially just safe and sustainable place. So how's that?
That's good. And I think in general, I mean, this is a community conversation, right? And it's a community decision. And wherever you fall in whether or not you think the library needs this increase or an increase but smaller or none at all, the City Council is absolutely looking for feedback. There's a hearing about it.
August 13th, I believe.
August 13th. This is no longer a timeless podcast.
The first half will be timeless, and the last half not as much.
It's fine. It's fine, because this is not a timeless question. It is actually quite timed.
Yeah, semi-urgent.
Yeah.
right?
So there's a public hearing that people can give feedback. And I know that the City Council is eager to hear from people.
Yeah. And we just wanted to answer some questions proactively a little bit, that just about what the situation is and where we're at. And if you have additional questions, we're just always happy to answer. There's contact information on the webpage. Please let us know.
Yeah.
Can we talk about books now?
We can talk
So
about
much
books
more
now.
fun. Just really quick.
Quickly. I think that we have nearly taxed Jen's time for...
Maybe a little, but I'm always willing to be late when it comes to talking about books.
Great.
Books. What have you been reading?
Oh, what did I just finish? Well, we talked board meeting. We talked about The Warm Hands of Ghosts.
Oh.
Just
Catherine Arden.
brilliant, so
So
brilliant. Let's see, what are my holds at the library? Oh, I just picked up Abby Jimenez's new contemporary romance. Finally,
It says something about summer, doesn't
yes,
it?
just for the summer.
Just for the summer.
That was great. Finished that last night. So
Cool.
I reached so I have a goal to read. It sounds sad for some of you who are like crazy readers, but a goal to read 100 books every year until I die.
No, that's great.
That's a good goal.
That's
Yeah.
a good goal.
And I hit it this week
Amazing. I'm
in
not.
June.
I'm not there.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
Impressive.
So yeah, I'm really excited. Let's see, another one. Have you guys read Gentleman in Moscow?
Yes.
I love that book so much.
It's a good one.
So good. So what are you guys reading?
I'll go
you
next. I just read James by Percival Everett.
Oh,
Did we talk about that in the last
I
podcast?
looked it up and I don't
No.
think we did, but if I did, it's worth 2 mentions. It's called James, and it is Huckleberry Finn told from Jim's perspective with just some really interesting twists and turns and explanations for why Huck Finn is written the way it is. It was just amazing. And my prediction is it's going to be winning some very big awards. It's timely and beautifully written, and I absolutely loved it. And I need more people to read it so I can talk about it with them.
I know. I keep meaning to read
know.
it, but
It's fine.
It's always available to me. Whereas some of my holds that I've been on hold for forever are just finally coming in.
Okay, well, what are you reading?
So what I'm reading, I'm actually not done with it yet, but I am reading, it's called The Fragile Threads of Power
heard of it.
by V.E. Schwab, who wrote The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I love. Love that book.
Me too.
So much. So after reading that book, that I was like, well, new favorite author.
Right.
I read her, it's called The Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. You don't really read fantasy that much. Do you? Oh.
I feel like I've just been insulted, but I read fantasy.
You read fantasy. I don't know that you get into like trilogies.
I'll read a trilogy. I will not read something with more than 3 books.
I'm really
there's
into the new trend of duologies lately.
Sure.
duology is
Sure.
nice.
I'm loving that.
Yeah.
Another book we have to mention, I don't know if you guys mentioned it last time, but Ali Condi's new book, The
The
Unwedding.
Unwedding. I haven't read it yet. I
I
need
just
to.
finished it.
Yeah.
It's good. I mean, it's so good. Like
Ali
mystery,
Condi.
and it was Reese Witherspoon's
Book pick of the month.
Which was fantastic. Congratulations to Ali. It's just a fun mystery. Like she just writes so well, and my heart just like I connected to
Yeah,
the
Ellery,
characters in it.
yeah.
Just it was great.
Um,
Read it.
I feel like of Ali Condi's like feathers in her cap. You know, like New York Times bestselling author, Reese Witherspoon Book Club pick, Provo City Library board member.
Yeah, she is on the
Yeah,
board.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
She's great.
And she is great. Yeah. Super awesome. I also have to say, I went to the Shakespeare Festival this last weekend.
Was it good? How are they this year?
So great. We saw A Winter's Tale, which is one of the very few Shakespeares I have never read. And
There's a bear in that one.
there's a bear. Yeah. It's that famous exit stage with bear chasing. Like what? But yeah, it's when
Exit chased by bear.
yeah, it's a tragic comedy. So the first half of it is very like the typical tragedy. Everybody is sad and everybody's dying. And then it like abrupt shift to comedy.
Oh, hilarious.
And yeah, it's one I had never read before. I read it before we went down and I was like astounded. There's so many one-liners in there that I'm like, if I were to have a tattoo, it would be that.
Oh.
Right? You know, just like,
Tattoo-worthy.
yeah, tattoo worthy for reals. And some strong female characters that you're like, She's awesome. So anyway, highly recommend A Winter's Tale.
Nice.
Well, thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
If you made it
If
this
you
far.
did, it's possible.
made it
I mean,
this
if you're watching this, you did make it this far. If you didn't, then you didn't.
Thank you for your,
I was gonna say,
thank you for
that's
your
not,
attention.
that's not a strong way to end. Thank you for being here for this conversation. It's been great. Jen, thanks for being here with
Yeah,
us. It's always great to
course.
talk to you.
Yeah, love it.
And we'll just keep doing good library things, regardless of our budget situation, though
We would love
we would love.
to be fully funded.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll see you next time.